Hi, Prue here from Gippsland GCASA. Today I've been asked by the youth space to do a Q&A of some questions about sex and relationships. So hopefully I can answer them all. I'm just going to get them up on my other screen and we'll go through them. So first question, what is consensual sex? So when we talk about consent, essentially, we mean giving our permission. So when we're thinking about having sex with someone, all parties involved must be giving their permission or their consent that is absolutely okay. So consensual sex is sex that you haven't been forced into, you haven't been pressured into, and all people are happy and feel safe and want to be there. Why do we need to learn about sex and relationships? So I think that it's good to have these conversations and learn, because essentially all people are going to have some form of a relationship throughout their life, whether that's an intimate relationship, a friendship. We have relationships with people throughout the different stages of our lives. And so it's important that we learn about relationships, we learn about what is going to make us feel good and feel happy, because there can be lots of different things thrown around. Sometimes it's a tricky conversation to have, but it's important that we talk about it, because at the end of the day, we all want to have happy, healthy, and respectful relationships. And sometimes sex can be involved, sometimes not. But again, it's about having a safe experience. How do you reject someone that's hitting on you? I think it's always important that we be polite and kind, but also stick up for what we want and what makes us feel comfortable. So if someone is pressuring you or is sort of harassing you about the fact that they like you, whether that be on your phone or in person, through social media, I think that it's important that we voice that that makes us feel uncomfortable, that we're not interested. It can be hard sometimes to say those things, but I think it's really important that we talk to each other and become, that it's okay that, sometimes we might just not be into that person, and that's okay. So being polite, you can just simply say, look, sorry, not interested. If you're in a situation where it's face to face, it might be in the context of a party or a group situation, you can bring a friend in to help you, or bring someone else to support you. You can just walk away, block that person if it becomes to a point where you're becoming really overwhelmed by it. But at the end of the day, you have the right to decide what you're comfortable with and what you want to do. Is non-consensual sex classified as rape? Yes. So sex without consent is sexual assault. So rape is often a term used, I guess, more broadly and interchangeably with sexual assault. But the definition of rape is forced intercourse or penetration. So that could be sex or oral sex. And there are lots of different forms of sexual assault. But essentially the answer to that question is yes. If we don't have consent, then it would be considered sexual assault. What are the laws around sexual assault? I guess, like I said, if we're having any kind of sexual interaction with someone or engaging in any kind of sexual activity, then we need to have that person's consent. If we don't have consent, then it would be considered sexual assault, and that's against the law. When we think about young people, in particularly those under the age of 18, then we kind of have a few different laws and things that might be impacted in regards to consent. So anyone who is under the age of 12 cannot provide sexual consent. So anyone who is under the age of 12 is unable to give consent, and if a person engages in a sexual activity with someone under the age of 12, then it would be considered child sexual abuse. From the ages 12 to 15, a young person is able to provide consent and be in a relationship with someone as long as that person is no more than 24 months older. And that goes right up until the days. So if a person is 24 months and 1 day older, then that would be outside the 24-month rule. And that relationship or that sexual interaction would be considered sexual assault, and the older person could potentially be charged and be reported to the police. So it's really important as a young person, especially when you're in these age groups, to learn more about your rights. A great place to go and find out more information is the Victoria Legal Aid website. They have resources and information for young people on there. And if you wanted to know more, I would recommend researching through their website and information. In Victoria, the age of consent is 16. So if you're 16 years old, you can provide consent to engage in sexual activity as long as the person is not in a position of care for you. So the older person or the other person that you're engaging with cannot be like a teacher, a sports coach, anyone who would be in a position of care, so family member, etc. So again, you can provide consent with, another person as long as they have no caring role over you. So it can sometimes get a bit tricky. And again, I would recommend doing some more research yourself and learning about the different laws that impact when it comes to sex and relationships, because there's also different laws around engaging with people online too. So in terms of like sexting and other things like that. Essentially, the laws around sexual assault come down to consent. So consent is the key here. So any sexual activity that occurs without a person's consent would be considered a sexual assault. There can be different forms of sexual assault. So for children and young people under the age of 18, something like being forced to watch pornography would be considered child sexual abuse. And so it's important, to know the different kinds of types and laws and rules that there are. So again, I've done another video that speaks more to what sexual assault is, some examples and some impacts that you can have a look at. But again, when it comes to any of the legal stuff, go have a look on the Victoria Legal Aid website. There's lots of great resources on there so that you can learn more. How do you know when you're ready to have sex or be in a relationship? I think this question is really dependent on each individual. Everyone's going to have different things that they want out of a relationship. So I think it's important first, if we are considering having sex or we are considering starting a relationship, to bring it back to ourselves and have a think about what we kind of want out of that relationship. What things are important to us? What do we value? Once we know those things, I think they can help us to be more confident in voicing those when we are in a relationship and being comfortable to say yes and no to things when we are having a relationship with someone. I think a good key is if a person who you're wanting to have an intimate relationship with makes you feel good, makes you feel safe, is respectful of you and your values and decisions, and you also, make that person feel the same, I feel that can be a good indicator essentially we want our relationships to feel good and we want them to feel safe and respectful. There's some pretty key things when we think about what makes a healthy relationship. So I think if we're starting to feel those things, then that could be an indicator that we're ready. But again, it comes down to each individual person. And again, if you're a young person under the age of 18, it's really important to think about what laws impact you as well, because that could also impact your decision too around the relationship and that person. So there's a lot of things to consider. And but at the end of the day, we want to have good and safe relationships that make us feel good. How do you know you're in a healthy relationship? So we spoke to this a little bit, but I think it's important that to have a healthy relationship, we must have a respectful and equal relationship. So often when I do community education presentations, I might throw out the question around what makes up a healthy relationship. And often the key things that will come back will be things like honesty, respect, equality, positive communication. They're sort of your general themes that people come up with and that are like a common theme of what might make up a healthy relationship. Each person is going to want a different thing out of relationships as well. So I think it's important that we know what is right for us. But essentially all relationships should make us feel good. We should feel equal and respected to our partner. So there are probably, some key things that would, be the basis for a healthy relationship. And that can be both intimate and friendships. We want friends that make us feel good. We want friends that, we feel we can be ourselves around, that we don't put each other down. I think a good and healthy relationship is one that lifts us up, one that supports us to be the best version of ourselves, whatever that might be. So I think across both, intimate relationships and friendships, we want to feel good and we want to feel safe. We want to feel like we can be ourselves, and that, whatever that means, it's respected by our partner and that we can communicate positively with one another. What are the signs of a bad relationship? So an unhealthy relationship might be one where there's lots of put downs. People, could be emotionally abusive, physically abusive. Often emotional abuse can be something that, at the beginning might be more subtle. We might not realize that there's emotional abuse present in the relationship. But things like put downs, making you feel bad, making you feel like you can't be yourself, that you're not respected, questioning where you are all the time, checking in on you, those kinds of like controlling behaviors can usually be a sign that maybe this relationship is unhealthy. And it kind of comes down to around the equality. So often we would talk about if there's one person has more power over the other person. So we want to have relationships where people feel equal. And if, there are some signs that maybe one person has more power over the other person, then that could be an indicator that this relationship maybe is unhealthy and abusive. So it's important that we kind of listen sometimes to our body's warning signs. Our body can sometimes tell us too if things are not okay, we might feel butterflies in our tummy and our heart might race, and we'll get all of those feelings. We're shaky, we get a headache, we feel sick. They can be signs that, maybe we're not feeling very safe with this person as well. If we're questioning our decisions all the time, or questioning what we want to say, or, trying to always make that person, feel okay and think, I better not say this because they'll get mad, or I better do this, or I better not go to that place or talk to that person. If we're starting to have those questions, then, it might be that maybe there are some unhealthy signs. The next question is, who can I talk to about a bad relationship? So if you are questioning maybe some things that are happening in your relationship, you could talk to a trusted friend about it, a trusted adult, someone from your school or your workplace who you might feel a trusting relationship with, and maybe talk to them and see what they think about some of the behaviors that are going on, or some of the things that you're concerned about. And it might be too that you want to reach out to a support service. So you could contact Gippsland GCASA, you could contact a counsellor at your school, or through your workplace. You could call 1-800-RESPECT. They are a 24/7 family violence and sexual assault counselling line. You could contact a place like Headspace, or a local family violence support service. So for the Latrobe Valley, you might contact the Orange Door, and they can provide some answers for you and point you in the right direction, and let you know about what supports are available, and maybe to help you navigate and understand what might be going on in the relationship if you are feeling a bit uncomfortable about it and you're feeling scared in any way. A relationship should make us feel good. We should feel like we don't have to question ourselves all the time, and we should never feel pressured or forced into doing anything that we don't want to do. Generally those are sort of some key signs for unhealthy or healthy relationship. If I do feel unsafe in a relationship, do I need to call the police? You can, yes. So most police stations or local police groups now have a family violence unit. So they support people who are in a relationship where there might be abuse present, and that can still be for young people too. So if you do feel really unsafe or you're in danger, you can call the police. And if it's something too that maybe they might not come out and see you for, they can certainly point you in the right direction too of seeking some support. So it's kind of up to you about how you're feeling at the time, what's going on. If you are in immediate danger though, then it would be best to give them a call so someone can come and support you. If you have experienced a sexual assault, then you can also call the police immediately and get support immediately for that as well. So we also have our team at Gippsland GCASA who can support. So if something has happened and you have experienced a sexual assault or some form of sexual abuse, then you can contact the police and talk to them about it, and you can get some support immediately for that too. So it doesn't matter when it happens. So if it did happen, you could call straight away. But if it happened a month ago or a few years ago, there's no timelines of when you can call the police or seek support from Gippsland GCASA. You are able to call at any time and report what has happened to you. What do I do if I'm being threatened in a relationship? So if you are being threatened, then that's a pretty clear indicator that this relationship is unhealthy and abusive, and I would recommend seeking some support with a support service that you feel comfortable. So if you are under the age of 18 and that's occurring and you're in a relationship, I would recommend calling the police, the Orange Door, Gippsland GCASA. There's a statewide Safe Steps number. I'll link all of these support numbers and services at the end of the video for you so that you can do your own research and make the calls that you need to. But if you are feeling threatened, if someone is making a threat to you in the moment, if they're threatening your life or their life, or physically or emotionally being abusive, you could call the police straight away to get that immediate support. If it's something that you has happened and you haven't spoken about it yet, you still can give a call. There's lots of people out there to offer that support, but at the end of the day, it's about your own safety. So that's the key in getting some support from the appropriate people to ensure that you remain safe. Is consent always verbal? No. So consent can be provided in lots of different ways. It's really important that we consider body language, because sometimes what can happen is if a person is in a situation where they're feeling threatened and unsafe, their body can activate their fight-flight response, which you may have heard of before. So sometimes too, our body will naturally freeze as a response to a feeling of threat. So therefore, we might not physically be able to verbalize our consent or provide, that we're feeling uncomfortable because we are in that frozen state. So it's really important that we're looking at all of these different signs. What's this person's body telling me? What's their language telling me? What, how can I assess this situation to ensure that this person still wants to be there? So, if someone's pulling away, if they're just kind of, frozen stiff, if they're not really enjoying the whole process, it's probably a good indicator that they're not really consenting to that, or they're a bit unsure. So that could be a good time to stop, check in with your partner, and make sure that they're okay. I think consent should be a progressive conversation. So just because you might have both agreed that, you want to have sex, you should be kind of checking in that process that everything is still okay and that person is still comfortable. And just because, you had sex yesterday doesn't mean that the person wants to have it again today. So again, it's not like a blanket rule. Even when you're married to someone or in a long-term relationship with someone, we still need to be checking in and getting consent. So yes, verbal cues, non-verbal cues are all relevant. Our body will often be a big indicator in whether someone is comfortable or not. So my advice would be to always check in with the person, and if they seem uncomfortable, if they're covering themselves, pulling away, wincing like that, usually those kinds of things too can be an indicator that the person's not really comfortable at the time. And then we should stop and respect their decision. Can I withdraw consent? Yes. So consent can be withdrawn at any time throughout any activity. Even if someone has consented and, a few minutes in, they decide they no longer want to do it, consent can be withdrawn. And if a person doesn't listen to that and they continue to engage in the act, then that would be considered sexual assault because the person has removed their consent. So yes, consent can be withdrawn at any time. If people are under the influence of drugs or alcohol, they are not able to provide consent because they are not in a state of mind where legally they would be considered being able to freely agree to consent. So that's another key thing to remember. There is a good video that often we will play in education sessions called Cup of Tea. You may have seen it before. Again, I'll provide a link to that video that sort of really, puts it in a easy to understand way how we can navigate consent in relationships. So I advise you, to take some time and watch that video as well and learn more about, the different elements of consent.